Well, I presume by now you've seen it. The petition, which has already gathered 2 million signatures demanding a general election in the United Kingdom. Now, I don't think people who are signing this believe that this is actually going to trigger a general election. But what it will do is put a little bit of egg on Keir Starmer's face, and it sends a message as well to the Labour Party, particularly to brand new Labour MPs. This is the first time they've been in Parliament, that people are unhappy with the direction that's being taken. All of this might, and I hope it does, create a little bit of internal pressure from some of those MPs onto Keir Starmer. Now, how did we get here? Well, that's what I'm going to explore in this video. I'm going to go through some, but not all because there's too many, of the things that Labour have done wrong, the policy U-turns, the pre-election pledges that they've abandoned, and just try and explain exactly how we got to a point where we have a petition in the UK unlike anything we've ever seen before, rapidly growing in speed with millions of dissatisfied people, many of whom don't even usually take an interest in politics, suddenly paying attention. Now, I'll start with one that we all know about, the winter fuel allowance. Labour, of course, one of their first actions was to cut the winter fuel allowance and winter fuel payments for pensioners. It's an interesting decision because it's one that Keir Starmer never suggested he would do prior to the election. In fact, he'd made repeated posts about how he'd met with the elderly who were very, very concerned about winter. In fact, saying that winter was frightening and terrifying. He made a pledge that the Labour Party would not betray pensioners. And all of this even goes back to 2017 when, at the time, the Conservative Party contemplated doing something similar, though not as bad, and the Labour Party said it would potentially lead to the deaths of almost 4,000 people. So knowing all of that, how exactly can Labour possibly justify making this decision as soon as they come into power? Well, I'll tell you how. It's because people who are older, people who are 60, 70, 80, 90, don't vote Labour. By the time you get to that age, you've acquired enough wisdom and enough intelligence to recognise that focusing on policies such as rights for kids, for example, isn't actually really something that they're interested in. Those voters aren't going to vote Labour by and large. So Keir Starmer felt perfectly able to, quite frankly, betray them. Well, here's another one for you, council tax. Now, what did Keir Starmer say about council tax right before the election? Well, I'll play a clip. I'll let Keir Starmer explain it in his own words.
We need to be clear about council tax. Labour would freeze council tax next year using that windfall tax that hasn't been collected. Yes, you heard it right. Not a penny more on your council tax, not a penny more than the bill you paid last year. And that is a tax cut for the 99% of working people.
Well, there you go. You heard it from the horse's mouth. Not a penny more. That's what he promised. Now, is that the reality? Of course it's not. In fact, council tax is due to rise by 5%, which means the average family will pay £100 more per year. It's just one of many examples of Keir Starmer duping the British public prior to the election, selling them something that he knew he wasn't going to be able to do, trying to win their votes and then betraying them almost immediately afterwards. Now, it's not just council tax, because the Labour Party has managed to find another way to increase taxes on you whilst pretending that they haven't. In particular, the employer contribution to national insurance is due to rise. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh, that's the employer contribution. Hey, look, when a business employs you, they factor in all of the costs of employing you, and that cost has just risen. If the employer didn't have to pay 15% national insurance contributions, they could, while sustaining their business, pay you 15% more. That's the reality. So this is still a tax on you. Next time you ask your employer for a pay rise, they're probably going to say no, because as far as they're concerned, they're already paying more just to have you employed. That's already baked in, and it's going to the government. What exactly does this mean? Well, first of all, it means that, as we've seen from some businesses, they're saying, well, we're going to go under, or we're just going to hire fewer people, which inevitably means that, of course, some of those people will find jobs elsewhere. Some will just go onto universal credit, which will lead to other tax rises, I have no doubt. But not only that, not only are they going to be employing fewer people, but the prices are going to go up. Listen, these are businesses. Their duty is to shareholders. They are going to keep their profits stable. They're not going to accept this and just make 200, 300, 400, 500 million pounds less this year. I'm talking about Tesco's and Sainsbury's. They're just going to pass the cost on to you as the customer. So in a way, that tax already comes back to bite you in the form of higher food prices. It's another tax on you. It's just done very, very sneakily, where they can pretend that they haven't risen taxes on you. They have. You just have to see through it. Now, here's another one for you. Energy prices. Of course, this was a massive, massive issue just a couple of years ago. And I'm going to read an article from The Spectator to you, because I can't put it in any better words. After reneging on its manifesto pledge to not raise national insurance, Labour is starting to struggle with another pledge: to cut energy bills by £300 per year. This morning, Ofgem has announced that its energy price cap will rise in January, so the average household will be paying £21 a year more. Together with the £149 price rise in October, this means that bills will be £170 higher than they were before Labour came to power. So, Ed Miliband, the man with all the charisma of a newt, told you that your prices for energy would come down by £300 a year, presumably because renewables is cheaper.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
And yet that's not the reality. In fact, what's actually happening is your prices for energy are going up. We're importing ever more energy from other countries like Denmark through the Viking link. And all of this in what? In a bit ambitions to net zero? I don't get it. I don't understand. We're losing our energy security almost as fast as we're losing our food security, if you can believe that. Now, another one that I'm sure you're only too familiar with are speech crimes. Now, of course, in the UK, sadly, there have always been plenty of restrictions on your free speech. Now, I would prefer something like the First Amendment in America, but it seems like this is just getting worse and worse and worse. The number of non-crime hate incidents, even applying to teenagers who call each other smelly and now somehow have a police record against their name, is just utterly insane. And here's what the real crime is that they want to tackle. They don't want you to notice. They don't want you to notice and speak about the things that are happening in this country. They don't want you to notice about the surging levels of sexual assaults in London, for example. The data's all there, but if you talk about it and make suggestions as to why that could be the case, that's a hate crime. So of course I wouldn't speculate on why that could possibly be. It's really, really awful to see the way that the UK is going. I have pressed Rupert Lowe, who I think is a brilliant MP, I've said it many times, and he said we as Reform would repeal a lot of those laws around hate speech. But I think we should go one better. We should just write a free speech bill that protects free speech in the United Kingdom and just cut all of that off immediately. No more dancing around it. Just something very, very similar to the First Amendment in America. That's my take on it anyway. Now, perhaps some of these problems can be solved by making great deals on the world stage. Well, here's a deal that the Labour Party have made that they seem to be proud of, bizarrely. The Chagos Islands, which we, until very recently, owned, we have given to Mauritius on the proviso that we can stay there for 100 years, because you see, these islands are actually in a very strategic location and there's a heavy UK and US military presence there. The Labour Party seem to be happy with this deal, that we've taken something we own, given it away, but we can stay there for a bit. Now, let me put it to you like this. If you owned a house and you went to the bank one day and you negotiated with them and you said, I'll give you the house, which I own outright, freehold, but can I stay for 100 years and my family? And they said, yes, of course. Would that be a good deal? No. It would not be a good deal. It would be an absolutely terrible deal. And yet, for some reason, the Labour Party are really, really proud of this. Now, a lot of people are speculating that Donald Trump's going to come in and just completely overturn this and say that's not happening because the US needs a presence there, which may happen. And quite frankly, that is what strong leadership looks like. But hey, that's the Labour on the world stage, I guess. maybe you take a more hopeful view of all of this and you think that the UK giving up the Chagos Islands is us finally recognising the need to stop punching above our weight on the international stage and focus a little bit more on some of the problems we have at home. But no, you'd be wrong, because at the recent COP29 summit, the Labour Party have put us on the hook for $300 billion of aid to go to developing countries. Now, we share this burden with some other developed countries. Of course, it's not all just the UK, but the world's biggest polluter, China, well, their contribution is optional. So I'm guessing they won't be paying that. Exactly how much, how many billions the UK is now on the hook for to simply give to other countries is not exactly clear, but we can presume that it's going to be a hell of a lot of money for a country that we're constantly told is so poor and so broke that we have to tax farmers to pay for one day of the NHS. Absolute madness. And what exactly is going to happen to that money once it's given to these developing countries? Who knows? And speaking about farmers, that's an interesting topic in and of itself. Now, I've spoken about farmers at length on this channel, so I won't go into it in too much detail. But you'll probably be aware that we've decided we need to raise £500 million in tax from the farmers and effectively cripple all of their businesses in the process, whilst at the same time, and this is the really infuriating part, sending $500 million overseas in aid to other farmers. So we are taxing our own farmers $500 million to send $500 million overseas to other farmers. You honestly can't make that up. It's like all of the elements of this government are so completely disconnected and disjointed that they're not even speaking to each other or even trying to present themselves as one holistic government working together, because that is absolutely insane and frankly infuriating. Now, here's another problem that Keir Starmer promised to fix. He promised that we would stop housing asylum seekers, illegal migrants, whatever you want to call them, in hotels. And these hotels are not one-star rickety old B&Bs in the middle of nowhere. No, one Twitter user walked straight past security and went to take a look at the hotel for himself, and frankly, it's quite plush. I mean, I'll play a clip now and you can see for yourself.
Beautiful hotel.
You can't go inside.
It's so nice.
Hello. Just come. They have this brief.
Are you the manager here?
Yeah. Why are you just going inside? Stop.
NHS. We've got the NHS in here.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Now keep that image in your head when you think about how little we've done over the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years to actually help our own homeless people here in Britain. It's absolutely tragic. It's really disgusting. It proves that a lot of things can be done. The government just doesn't have the will to do any of these things until the problem is, too difficult for them to avoid. It's always a case of putting out fires and not actually proactively solving things and making innovative solutions. Anyway, have the Labour Party kept to their pledge to end the use of hotels for asylum seekers, illegal migrants, whatever? Well, no, of course they haven't. Of course they haven't. In fact, the numbers have risen. There are now more people in more hotels than there were before Labour took over. And here's the thing. What exactly is their grand plan? How exactly are they going to solve this? Because I'll tell you what the Labour Party are not going to do. They're not going to build camps, for example, to put these people in. They definitely won't do that. They said the Bibby Stockholm was completely unsuitable for people to live in and immediately pulled people out, or they're pulling people out now and putting them into hotels. So what's their solution? Well, I'll tell you what I think their solution will be. They'll mass grant asylum on all of these claims, which of course will be a massive incentive for more and more people to come. But in the short term, what they'll be able to say is, well, we're slowing down the use of hotels. And that will be technically true because these people will have been moved to social housing and put on universal credit, which may actually be more expensive and is certainly more damaging to the moral fabric of this country for all of those British people who desperately need social housing but will be pushed to the back of the queue because the government wants to gloat about how it's made a big difference to hotels and asylum seekers. Not good, not real solutions, but to very real problems. Now here's another one for free, which is kind of hilarious. Remember Ed Miliband the guy I was speaking about earlier, most famous for being, well, basically the wrong brother and not having the strength and the manpower to appropriately eat a bacon sandwich. Yeah, that guy. Well, if you want a boiler, Ed says there's a tax for that. Yeah, if you want a boiler to heat your house, there's a tax for that now. It's on its way, because what you should have is a heat pump, a very, very expensive heat pump, which quite frankly you can't even use in a city or in a town. But that's irrelevant, Ed, because everything dies on the altar of net zero. This whole country will be impoverished, completely impoverished on the altar of net zero. That's all that matters. Net zero, net zero, net zero. It's like the new religion. They think they can justify absolutely everything, completely devastating this country until it's completely third world and you're begging for communism at this point, which may well be the aim, all on the altar of net zero. Utter insanity. So look, that's why, in a nutshell, and that's not all of the things, I just picked a few of my favourites, but that's why people in this country are completely fed up with the Labour Party. Already, after just 6 months, people are demanding change. Now, of course, this isn't everyone. There's probably a lot of people who dwell in cities who are loving all of this because none of it really affects them anyway. Or so they think. You know, when farmers get shafted and they can't just go to Waitrose and get food anymore, maybe they'll change their mind. And these are not exactly the kinds of people who can survive without the state, to be quite frank. So I think they are playing a more dangerous game than they perhaps realise. But look, that's why people in this country are completely sick of it, absolutely fed up. Anyway, leave your comments below. Let me know what I missed, what else the Labour Party is doing to absolutely devastate this once great country. It's very, very sad. I'm laughing, but it's like one of those awkward laughs, you know, it's not very funny. So, right, like, comment and subscribe. Cheers.